Well, a very good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Welcome to the channel. For those of you that aren't aware, my name is Anna, and of course, I'm the one that creates the videos here and shares my knowledge as far as I can. By no means, I've got to put this thing on, by no means do I attempt to portray that I know everything about everything. I don't. I share my wisdom or my knowledge, which that's what wisdom is, with you as part of keeping my own knowledge fresh and also as part of growing, I guess. The more we share our information and knowledge, the more we actually expand upon it. And so I invite everybody to, if they've got a comment to make in regard to the information I share, by all means, leave a comment under the video because, or in the comment section, basically, because that helps us to all grow. The other thing that I was going to say is I do tend to have a potential to go for a waffle, to go down the tangent. I get distracted. I do notes, but I sometimes go and do a bit of a waffle is where I'm going with this. So please do feel free to look in the description. I'm not going to be offended if you don't watch the entire video, but jump to the sections that are actually of interest to you or that may hold value for you. Quite often what I do is I will share with you information that I have heard from other people. I will share with you my experiences where I've had them, and sometimes in the process of creating these videos, I actually end up doing a bit of research. So I'll share with you the information that I gather along the way, and I encourage you to do your own research on the crystals that you're interested in buying. So, of course, normally in the welcome to the channel slide, I usually turn around and say what crystal we're actually discussing, but I hope that you've actually picked it up from the front slide, the thumbnail, that today we're going to be talking about Realgar and Orpiment. Now, this is really interesting for me because I actually hadn't heard of it before. I was trying to put together a list of crystals that might be beneficial for certain things because down the track I plan to deliver videos that are, if you've got X condition, you might benefit from such and such a crystal, right? So where I'm going with this is I heard about Realgar and Orpiment and I looked at its metaphysical attributes and I thought, this sounds absolutely wonderful, as you do. And I thought, you know what does it actually look like? So I did a Google and I found out what it looked like and I started informing and educating myself about it. So I went and I bought one. So it's not that common, apparently, but I have a tower. I've got one of those little obelisks now that I actually keep in the study. And this is part of me testing and trialing the attributes of the crystal just for my own sense of knowledge and so that I can share it with you down the track. But anyway, about Realgar and Orpiment, they are two separate crystals that are mixed together, a bit like... oh gosh, gee, I'm trying to think of the one. Is it chrysocolla? Is a mix of malachite and I can't remember what the blue one is right now. Malachite and something else. I think it is. I'm going to be doing the video on chrysocolla in the near future. But anyway, where I'm going with this is Realgar and Orpiment. They are two separate crystals that tend to grow side by side on a host rock. Now, we're going to talk about the mineral properties of it in one of the upcoming slides, but this is why when you look at Realgar and Orpiment, when it's together, you get these two color distributions. But I'll talk about that more on the next slide as to why it looks the way it looks when we're talking about the mineral information. So before we get into what I consider to be the interesting stuff, Realgar and Orpiment is actually supposed to be beneficial for the star sign Capricorn. Now, if you're not a Capricorn, don't stress about it because I'm not a Capricorn. Crystals can benefit anybody at any time. If you're seeking the healing attributes or the metaphysical attributes of Realgar, it doesn't matter what I'm going. By the way, for the rest of this video, I'm just going to call it Realgar because it's too much of a mouthful. Realgar, though, is actually yellow without any orange in it, just so you know. But anyway, where I'm going with this is if it's got the attributes that you're seeking to draw into your life, well, anybody can work with it. But for some reason, it's directed towards the star sign Capricorn. So for those that aren't aware, Capricorn is the goat and it is the earth sign. So we might work out as we go through this slide why it's actually directed towards Capricorn or recommended for people that have Capricorn as either their sun or moon ascendancies, I think it is. So, from an overview perspective of the attributes, the metaphysical properties, it's supposed to be a stone of empowerment. So, if people are stuck in a victim mentality, or if they're attempting to overcome having been the victim of something, whether or not they're stuck in or not, whether it's a fresh victimization, shall we say, then Realgar and Orpiment is meant to assist the person to shift beyond that. It's empowering. It's supposed to balance the masculine and feminine polarities within. It's supposed to support willpower. Sometimes we want to do something, but we tend to procrastinate or we put things off. This is actually one of the reasons why I decided to buy it, because I thought, if this is about directing my will and aligning it with the divine, that's something that I can benefit from. Same with being able to focus and concentrate and to get some clarity of thoughts, because I have a creative mind, for example, and my mind tends to get very busy. It can jump from one idea to the other. So one time I might be looking at creating the content on the videos, other times I'm looking at doing creative artwork for the channel, and then of course there's ideas for my home, family life, and that kind of thing. So my thoughts can easily become scattered. So this is about bringing them together and allowing a person to focus on perhaps a goal through to completion. Now, if a person's experiencing some fatigue and exhaustion or whatever, then it's supposed to energize, to give back some vitality, some passion and drive. Now, when I look at this next one about adaptation and change, that is probably why, as I said, it might reveal itself. Certainly, this would be beneficial, not just to Capricorn, I don't think, but to some of the earth stones or the earth fire. Gosh, if I can say the word, the earth signs. Who are they? There is Virgo, Capricorn, and what's my other one? Virgo, Capricorn. What's the other one? It's not Aries. Taurus. That was the one I was thinking of. They're the three earth signs. Now, from what I know, because I'm no expert on astrology, but my understanding of interacting with people with earth signs is that quite often they like that stability. They don't like to step outside of their comfort zone, and too much change can actually really destabilize them if the change happens too quickly. It has that capacity to destabilize them emotionally. And I guess the point then would be that Realgar and Orpiment helps to keep them stable throughout periods of change and transition. That could be if they're moving house, changing jobs, changes in the family unit, all of this kind of thing. Sorry, I just had to pause it and look at my notes. Okay, we'll go into the other metaphysical properties and attributes in greater detail after we talk about the mineral structure of this crystal. Such a mouthful. So I've got to admit, as much as this information might be exciting for those people that are geologists, I find it all a little bit dry and boring. And for me, all I guess I really want to know about the mineral stuff of a crystal is whereabouts can I source it if I'm going to buy it? Where is it found? And how hard is it, But because we're doing so much buying online and there's no guarantees that what we're buying is authentic, then it is important to know other information as well. So, for instance, the first thing we need to know actually about Realgar and Orpiment is it is highly toxic. And I have a bit of a black sense of humour, I must admit. As I was updating the slides, I saw one website that actually had photographs of Realgar and Orpiment minerals, such as this image here. And it's got this great big disclaimer, not sold online. So basically anybody that wants to buy Realgar and Orpiment actually has to go and visit their premises, because clearly it's a huge safety issue in Australia, because it was an Australian website. But the reason I had a laugh, is because I actually bought mine online, and I thought, well, I'm not sure that information has been shared with everybody that's actually selling and retailing crystals, because it was an Australian website that I bought my little tower from. So, going away from the toxic stuff, just that reminder that it's arsenic and sulfur. So there is a safety caution that goes with this, and I'll revisit it across the slides. And that is that if you're going to handle this stuff, even if it's polished, you must actually wash your hands afterwards. You've got to play it safe with it, because it is just so highly toxic. And the other thing is, even if it's polished like my tower, it's very, very soft as crystals go. Now, the relevance for us, this is for you and me, is that the crystal form being monoclinic, which is just, to me, it's like, oh, what do you actually mean by that? It makes my brain strain, okay? I put in this little image here next to the mineral. It says here all three axes are unequal in length and two axes are perpendicular to each other. If you don't understand those words, just go and Google it, because this is how the crystals form anyway. Now, what I did find interesting in my research is that one of the mineral specimens, because when it comes to naming Realgar and Orpiment, I think each area, and I'm open to correction here, is going to have it look slightly different as per the location. And there's one that's called Kalgoorlieite. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I actually spent a number of years in Kalgoorlie. And this is where I started getting into crystals, because it's just so mineral rich. It was just a fabulous place to actually source minerals, and I connected with a lot of prospectors who were out there going bush trying to find gold, but in the meantime finding some really amazing crystals. And so I was very lucky I managed to get a lot of them. But anyway, going back to Realgar and Orpiment, just this reminder that they're actually two separate crystals, and they're very similar within their mineral structure, so they will quite often grow together apparently. And they also grow in the same geological environments, which is basically you call mineral deposits, right? And therefore they also have similar physical properties and similar uses, the way they've been used by people. You can Google it. They've even been used in Chinese fireworks at different times. That would be the sulfur component. Now, the other thing too, when it comes to where they're actually deposited, because it's got this arsenic and sulfur in it, generally anything that's volcanic, but you can actually have mine pits or whatever, under the surface, underground deposits of them. The reason why I found that bit interesting myself is, of course, we don't have volcanoes in Australia. And we do know, however, that obviously many hundreds of thousands of years ago we actually did. But if they were ever active, it won't have been in probably the last couple of 100,000 years. So anyway, obviously the deposits that we've got here in Western Australia go back a long, long time. Now, the other thing to remember too is, if we're going to buy, especially if you're going to buy online, because obviously other countries are going to have different rules to what Australia has, they can now actually manufacture orpiment and Realgar. Now, just to clearly outline here, because I think I said in the first slide that Realgar is the yellow stuff. No. I got that wrong. Okay, Realgar is actually the orange type part of this crystal, and some mineral deposits that you find of Realgar, it's actually this beautiful, beautiful red. I mean, highly toxic, but beautiful red. And it's also known as ruby sulfur by some people. The orpiment is the part that's yellow. And just to be clear again, just to reiterate this bit, both aspects are toxic. Both contain arsenic, both contain sulfur, and this is why they're called arsenic sulfide. So just to get your head around this, I thought I would put up some photographs of the minerals as when they're in their separate state, basically. So I've put up here as well where I've sourced the images from. On the left-hand side, that is where you see the Realgar, this beautiful red type on there. And then on the right-hand side, these are very quality specimens, by the way. The yellow one, obviously, is the orpiment. And then when you get them together, that's your Realgar and your orpiment on the right-hand side. This is top-grade mineral photos, though. Very pretty, actually, even if toxic. So as far as buying tips go, I put this photo up as well, just so that you can see that it comes in different shapes and forms and this kind of thing. And also you can see that this particular, the central image is being retailed, and the person has put up next to the big crystal, if you like, and it won't be that big, the coin to give dimension so that people understand what it is they're buying. Now, the thing is that that's not going to translate around the world, because I don't know what that coin is. I don't know what nationality it is. and so for me, it's going to be completely meaningless. So if you were looking to buy online, it's actually far better to have them send you an image where you've got the ruler, whether it's centimeters or inches or whatever, so that you can look at it and see the width, the dimensions, and see it from all angles, because that might be a slice and you might be looking at that and thinking, oh, well, that's a good size and a fair price and all the rest of it. And then when you get your mineral, whether it's Realgar and Orpiment or anything else, it's actually a sliver. It might only be 4 millimeters thick. And then you think, well, that's particularly disappointing. So having the dimensions up is really good. Knowing the weight of the item will also give you an idea, but it's not necessarily reliable. Just so you know, because obviously some crystals are heavier than others by weight. So you might actually be buying this particular one, and it might be lightweight and end up being quite a substantial size when it sits in your palm, for example. But anyway, other buying tips, and I'm just going to run past these because we do this all the time, is if you're buying from overseas where it's not sourced, or, if somebody, perhaps, I'll use Mexico because I don't know if it's mined in Mexico, but let's say somebody in Mexico where it's not a natural source or it's not mined there, they will probably have bought it from a supplier in another country. They've had to pay freight. They've got to put their profit on and all of that kind of stuff. And the price just keeps going up. So you're going to be paying top dollar if it's not local. To put it in perspective, if I was going to buy Realgar in Australia, which I did, and this now explains to me why it was so reasonably priced. I got it for a very good price, I thought, because I'd been looking online. But of course, it's local to Australia, although I think the piece that I brought was probably mined in Queensland, even though we've got it in WA. Either way, it's a good piece. Okay, so there's that business of dimension. You've also got to look at how much it's going to cost for freight to get it sent to you. And all of this thing is going to influence your buying. All right. Now, what else was I going to say okay, the other buying tip is apparently, I know I haven't seen Bumblebee Jasper, but sometimes people get confused between Realgar and Orpiment and Bumblebee Jasper. I might get an image of that. So the other tip would be, and I learned this from checking out a geology site, is that yes, when they talk about making synthetic Realgar or Orpiment, actually I beg your pardon, so we're talking about Orpiment here because Orpiment is the yellow one. One of the geos said that they had seen a specimen that had been bought from China, and what they had done, these retailers, was actually get a whole heap of small ones and somehow get them to adhere to each other so that it ended up looking like a very large Orpiment specimen. Okay. I don't know if it was this bright yellow colour here. What else? I think it's difficult to tell if it's a fake. If I recall correctly, the yellow specimen on the right, I think the geos were saying that they think that it's a fake. They're not 100% sure. They can't tell unless they actually test it. And of course, they were looking at a photograph online. But what they said, the biggest tip for buying Realgar and Orpiment is actually just to make sure you buy from a reputable retailer or seller. What was the other thing? I think they said the Realgar, the red part, that actually can't be synthetically constructed at the moment. So that's good news for us, the buyers. So a little bit of a history lesson here, okay? I put this image in, or these images here, just to remind people it is incredibly toxic, and the reason why it's toxic, I perceive, is because of the arsenic, okay? Now, many people won't know, and in fact the younger generation, my children's generation, won't actually know that back in the day we used to have fly strips. If we went over and saw our grannies and that kind of thing, they would have images like this little box that would be hanging around the house, because obviously in Australia we've got really big problems with flies, and what would happen is the flies would bang against these strips and then they would actually go away and die. So these yellow strips were soaked with arsenic, and so this is the issue when it comes to Realgar and Orpiment. It is full of arsenic. Now, other ways that arsenic is used is actually in your rat poison, okay? And so where people will turn around and say, you quite often see as safety precautions for using Realgar and Orpiment, if you're going to meditate with it, wash your hands afterwards. That's very true. But what I realised is, because I have my dog, my little Toby boy, and when I've got a table set up that's actually quite low down, where I've got my selenite and that kind of thing, where I put my crystals when I'm cleansing and charging them. And it's usually closed off because Toby will go in there and help himself to things that he shouldn't help himself to, or perhaps he might try and drag the beautiful tablecloth off, because he can be a bit naughty. Anyway, where I'm going with this is, I closed that door off. Now, I had forgotten to close the door, and he got in there and he went quiet. He had a quiet moment. He must have worn himself out. But either way, my heart almost stopped, because I realised that I had my tower in an area where he actually could reach, and he is a licker. So you've got to actually make sure that if you do have it, that you put it out the reach of small children and your pets, okay? Because it will be extremely toxic to them as well. The smaller the physical body, the more effective the arsenic is for actually, harmful consequences. And realistically, if you've got a display cabinet, it's probably much better to actually keep your Realgar and Orpiment under lock and key, I would suggest, okay? Be very, very careful with it. I understand why they've made it illegal, I think, in some parts of the world to actually sell it. So now let's take a deeper dive into the metaphysical benefits of Realgar and Orpiment, because there's quite a few of them, and this is why it actually looked so attractive to me when I was reading up about it without actually knowing about the toxicity. I didn't find out about that until later. So it's very good for people that are attempting to do creative endeavours. It's recommended for artists and musicians, and it said, where we talk about willpower, it's said to align our will with divine will and support manifestation, the achievement of your goals and your dreams, bringing them into reality. So it's a crystal for transformation, a crystal for new beginnings. It encourages people to develop their intuitive gifts. Now, for those that are new to the metaphysical stuff, don't confuse intuition with clairvoyance, is where I'm going. Intuition is your gut instinct. That's that inner knowing. It's where you just know. You can't explain why, but you just know the right thing to do. So you don't need to be a psychic to use this crystal, is where I'm going. Although if you were into it and you wanted to develop your psychic gifts, you certainly could, because it carries the capacity to support this interdimensional and celestial communication. So that is communicating with the earth elements, if you like, and with the angels and guides and all of that kind of thing. So it's very much a crystal that inspires and motivates a person to reach their true potential. I probably should explain the masculine and feminine polarities a bit better, okay? If we are now, I don't want to start a whole gender discussion here. I'm putting my hand up to that. You can't see it. That is not the intention here. When we look at descriptors universally over thousands of years, energy is said to be feminine or masculine, and the masculine is associated with provide, protect, and the feminine is nurture, nourish, okay? And so your feminine is your intuitive side, and your masculine is this business to be able to take care of yourself. So it's a crystal that fosters independence as well, where, you can be, if you're all feminine, then you're probably dealing with all sorts of practical problems, such as sustaining your tenancy, or if you're paying your bills, that kind of thing. If a person, and whether they're male or female, we all have masculine and feminine polarities within us. And if we're healthy, they're both in balance, okay? But if somebody is highly masculinized in their energy, that means that they may actually struggle to form relationships with other people because they lack a certain amount of sensitivity and emotional responsiveness. And even if they pick up on the other person's emotional state, they will lack the skills to be able to respond to them in healthy ways. That's how I perceive it. Obviously, your thoughts and opinions, and you might have a better way of expressing it than me. But either way, these are the attributes that, to me, make it a very attractive crystal for the start of a new year when I've got creative endeavours going on in my plans. So, I mean, when it comes to the physical, metaphysical properties, shall we say, components, attributes, you can see actually these will be, if it's as it says, as people say it is, these certainly are going to be very beneficial for all of us. We live in a time where so many people have anxiety and depressive type disorders, heart function. Who's not going to benefit from that? Having the brain to function properly, being able to process thoughts, able to have balanced left and right side of the brain, that's always going to be a bonus. If you're trying to overcome behavioral problems, remember that neuropathy is part of that. They're reflexive learnings. If you're going to try to create new thought patterns and new behaviors, it's about building new neural pathways, so it's going to be beneficial for that. Those people that experience fatigue and exhaustion, and this could be people with chronic fatigue, to be honest, and people that I've heard of people that have got delayed COVID recovery times, any of those kind of illnesses that leave you in a constant state of feeling depleted energetically. It's supposed to be beneficial for that. And also, when we talk about energizing and vitality, for me, I could benefit with that. Okay. Sometimes I get a bit bored with the stuff that I'm doing and I need to renew my passion, shall we say, to encourage myself to get in and do what I've got to do. So I consider it to actually have a lot of benefits. It's got a multitasking aspect to it for sure. So when it comes to the emotional benefits, you can see here as well that it's got a lot of, I say emotional, but we're actually talking emotional psychological benefits. You can see here that there's a lot involved with it as well. It looks absolutely brilliant, to be honest. There's that passion that I'm trying to grab a hold of, and the writer's block, overcoming that. Probably I need to work on my communication as well, actually. And this emotional calming and soothing and removing blocks, who's not going to benefit from that? So when it comes to the chakras, I think it's fairly obvious. If we're talking about colors, it is associated with your solar plexus and your sacral chakras, and also your root and your base chakra. Now, I would say potentially even another chakra that we call the star chakra, which is about grounding, and that would depend. You will have seen in some of those images that there's a little bit of a black, a host rock, if you like. And for me, that is about bringing this will, trust, those confidence factors and the passion and the creativity and this business of being able to support yourself and protect, that whole balance thing, about really embedding that into your life path, your life journey. What else can I say about this? Just that Realgar is more than just a healer of the yellow chakra, apparently. It's considered to be an activator. So not just the solar plexus, actually, the Realgar is, of course, the red, but it is considered to activate those base three chakras. So if they've been completely blocked, basically we're talking about it's going to smash it open. What a bonus. I should probably turn around and say how I'm finding it at the moment. I might do that in the next video. Did I say the next video? I actually meant the next slide. I was just testing you. I'm joking. Okay, so where I'm going with this is the suitable uses or the recommended uses for Realgar and Orpiment obviously does not include as jewellery, whether it's polished or not. And even if you were going to use it as an ornament in your environment, like this particular image here, you would be very wary about where you were to place it. And this is because when Realgar and Orpiment are exposed to sunlight and air, they start to disintegrate and break down. So that's going to put toxicity into your environment. So of course, yes, you do have to be very careful. And so probably the best way to actually have it is as a specimen in one of those little specimen boxes. And I saw one geo who had said that they had placed their the yellow one, the orpiment, onto their windowsill. They knew that the Realgar could be damaged by sunlight, but they didn't know the orpiment could be as well. And what they noticed was a thinning of the external layer of the polished orpiment, and where it had started to bubble. So what the person said was that the best way to actually see the beauty of the orpiment is actually by having it on display with sunlight. But the fact of the matter is it's too toxic to do that. So you just wouldn't do it. And this person said that they actually put it, I think they put it in a bag and put it in a cupboard or something like that, because it's just too dangerous, okay? If you were going to meditate with it, which of course that's what they encourage you to do as far as accessing these spiritual metaphysical properties, you can do it. You just must be aware that as soon as you've finished with it, lock it back up and then, lock it up, put it away, wash your hands afterwards. Now, what I was going to say, what I observed, and if I'm honest, sometimes you need a period of time to be able to fully assess whether or not you're reaching a plan or a goal or whatever. And my thoughts were, well, I've had this Realgar now for a couple of weeks, my tower. And I remember that I actually said to somebody the other day, and I might have said it on my Sunday yarning video, I haven't noticed any observable changes as far as the empowerment factor goes with the crystal. And then I did a bit of Googling on it as well, and I saw that it's supposed to not be one of those really rapid-paced energy crystals. Apparently, there are ones, just so that you know, if it says that it does this and then you give a piece to somebody and they come back and they'll tell you it happened overnight kind of thing. That's not what would happen with Realgar and Orpiment. It's apparently a slower and a more gradual change. But anyway, where I'm going with this is upon reflection, I think I am seeing changes actually, because I did the Sunday yarning video and I talked about an issue that I've got with my next door neighbour, and it's to do with boundaries and fencing. And that leads to obviously some behavioural interactions and that kind of stuff. And so what I've done is I've actually stepped up to the plate and I'm drawing my line in the sand. Now that's a first for me with this particular neighbour, okay? So maybe the Realgar and Orpiment is working. Maybe I am starting to become more assertive with my boundaries, and that's about standing my ground too. So just something for us all to consider, I guess. So as always, when it comes to affirmations, I always give you some to sort of to give you an example so that you create your own, because the best affirmations are the ones that we personalize for ourselves. Other people can give us them and they might sound good, and they probably are good as well, but generally speaking, it's best if we can actually create something for ourselves. So my understanding is you start with I am, you finish with I am, you keep it as a short sentence, and you repeat them. So whatever it is that you're trying to address as far as these healing attributes go, so that you can develop them within your own life and persona, you would then repeat it again and again each day, and if you're really wanting to create a pathway, shall we say, then you might actually want to do it, say, 4 times a day, sets of 4 or something like that. So a person that's got writer's block, for example, might do this one where I've got, I am divinely inspired and open to receive my guidance and acting upon my hunches. I am. Okay, so you put the emphasis on the I am, and you actually make it sound a little bit more lively than what I've just done. You've got to put some oomph into it, okay? But definitely personalize them. You can do the same if there's a physical condition. And just a reminder that when it comes to affirmations, you're not sitting there turning around saying, I am so fabulous, I am. Okay, that's not an affirmation. That's actually leading to delusional and mental health, as far as I'm concerned, a few mental health issues, potentially narcissism. But an affirmation is one, I believe, that puts the focus and love onto the creator, in the recognition that the creator is amazing and we are gifted. We're all gifted. Every single one of us is unique expression of the creator, and we're all absolutely fabulous, shall we say. Have a bit of a laugh at this. There's a tongue in cheek. You can't see it. I've got a tongue in my cheek. But yeah, look, we all have wonderful gifts. We're all talented. We may not have found our talents, some of us. We might still be looking for them, but we're all these divine specimens. But at the end of the day, we're all just one little dot on the face of the planet. So there's about keeping our ego in check, putting things into perspective. When we think about the fact that, we are gifted, we are divine specimens of the Creator, but so are we all, and we're just one of the many, and we're all just traveling a journey of life. So we don't let our ego get out of check. We retain some humility there, shall I say. So, because of Realgar and Orpiment being what it is, I'm not going to give a message or an oracle message associated with this, because the bottom line, it's never going to be in my crystal lucky dip bowl for people to draw out. I would be worried about arsenic transfer. Anyway, no message. So we've kind of covered this throughout the video as far as crystal care goes for Realgar and Orpiment, but I'm going to revisit it here just in case people jump, if they've missed certain slides and they're jumping straight to the how do I care for my crystal. So in summary, Realgar and Orpiment is highly, highly toxic. You've got to care for it really well. You've got to be very careful. The Realgar itself is going to turn to dust if it's exposed to light. It should not be exposed at any time whatsoever to water or steam, because it can create toxic fumes. Remember, it contains arsenic, okay, and sulfur. I would say, I say this with some dubiousness, I'm not sure saging actually is the way to go. When I look at my notes, I thought, you could sage, but sage has got open flame to it, and I think there's probably risk associated with that as well. You like to think that when you're doing your saging and your incense that none of it's going to drop on your crystal, but unless you're standing there watching it, there's every chance it might. So I don't think, in fact, that I would use anything but a dedicated piece of selenite for my because of course I've got my Realgar and Orpiment, only because it's such a volatile crystal. Now, if you missed it, if it's exposed to sunlight, particularly I keep getting confused between my words. Orpiment is the yellow, okay? The orpiment, when exposed to sunlight, will deteriorate, it will bubble, it will lose its texture, apparently, from the website, the Geo website that I looked at. And once that outer seal is damaged, then there is a higher risk of cross-contamination when you're holding the crystal with the arsenic and the sulfur leaching onto you. So, as I said before, I would be keeping my tower. I've got it out at the moment in my study, but it's up quite high on a mantelpiece, okay? But I certainly, if there was any risk of a child getting to it or my pet, it would be put under a lock and key and into a cupboard. What else? That was the other reminder, actually. Just remember, if you've got pets or children, they may touch and lick, and you definitely don't want them doing that. So it needs to be put out of reach, potentially under a lock and key. And if you do choose to meditate with it, then you need to wash your hands afterwards, okay? So it's not just about, when it comes to this particular crystal, it's not just about looking after the crystal, it's looking after yourself, the environment, and the people and animals within it. The other thing to bear in mind there as well is, if you do have some, don't let it bang up against anything sharp, because if that surface, so of course I've got the tower, if the surface gets damaged, then there is risk of arsenic poisoning, okay? So if you've jumped ahead with a few slides, please go and watch the slide on toxicity, okay? So, my friends, that is it for today. I hope you find this an interesting video. I hope I've managed to make it interesting. I find Realgar and Orpiment to be actually a very interesting crystal. But anyway, in the meantime, I have given you all the information that I have. I recommend that you actually do some research and Googling on your own account if you were considering buying it, and getting to know and understand it a little bit more, because it certainly is a pretty crystal as well, even if it is completely toxic. For now, though, I'm going to say take care of yourselves. Love you, leave you. Have a blessed day, blessed week. Catch you on the next video. Bye-bye for now.